Some people come into the world gently. And then there's Angela Legg, a woman who died twice in her first 24 hours of life, beat every medical prediction ever made about her, survived systems that were not built for her, and somehow walked out with a voice powerful enough to fill any room she steps into. Born 2 months premature in Miami to a Haitian immigrant mother, Angela weighed barely 3 pounds, small enough to fit into a hand. Doctors told her birth mother that taking her home meant certain she would die. So in the most excruciating moment of her life, Angela's mother made the only decision she believed could save her daughter. She chose adoption. What happened next feels like destiny. A NICU nurse, a white single mom who already had 2 boys, looked at this fragile baby and said, "Give me that one." That moment set off a chain of events that included interracial adoption at a time when it was still illegal in parts of the country, a move across states, deep bonds with unlikely caregivers, childhood in predominantly white spaces, racial isolation, belonging, survival, and later, the mother of all reunions, finding her sister, her brother, and the father she was told had died. Today, Angela is a force, a communication expert, speaker, leadership coach, and the woman executives hire when they're finally ready to find the voice they've been hiding. This conversation is about adoption, yes, but it's also about identity, race, survival, love, the complexity of reunion, and what it means to rise into the person you were always meant to be, even when the odds told you that you wouldn't make it. Angela has never lived a small life, and we're about to hear why. Welcome to the Adoption Roadmap Podcast. Your dream is to become a parent. My dream is to help you get there. I'm Rebecca Greenspan, an adoptive mom who's guided over 500 families through the beauty and complexity of adoption. Through my work with families and professionals across the country, I've seen what actually moves people forward and what holds them back. Each week, I bring you practical advice, expert voices from all sides of adoption, and the positivity you need to navigate your journey with clarity, confidence, and trust. Let's get into it. Hey, real quick, if you're listening to this podcast because you're seriously considering adoption, you don't have to figure this out alone. At RG Adoption Consulting, my team and I guide hopeful families through every step of the adoption process using our proven 4-step roadmap. In 2025, 62% of our families brought their baby home within 12 months. If that sounds like something you're ready for, we'll help you figure out your next best steps. Book a complimentary adoption strategy session at rgadoptionconsulting.com. Angela, welcome to the Adoption Roadmap Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. That intro is is exactly, you nailed it. And it's so crazy to hear your own story reiterated back to you. And I'm just super excited to be here. There's definitely a great energy that comes from you. And my story is important. It's got a lot of aspects to it. And I'm here to tell it. I'm here to share the legacy of my family who did astronomical things in society to put me where I am today.
Well, let's dig in. So let's start with where you are now instead of the beginning of the story, which we'll get to. You help executives, creatives, and leaders find their voice. What's the current chapter of your life about, and how do you think your adoption journey prepared you to be this person that you are today?
My adoption story is the reason why I do what I do today. Ever since I was little, I've been told about my adoption story. It's always been a story. And so growing up, that's what my family did. That's how I explained my situation. That's how I made people understand this complex situation. And little did I know that that was going to be the foundation of what I am today. And that is communication. I'm able to explain very complex ideas, very out of the box ideas to people to make them care about it, to make them understand it, to make them invest in it. And that all stems from how I grew up. I mean, you guys heard, put up for adoption by a beautiful Haitian immigrant and adopted into white culture. And not just a white family, white culture, because race and culture are two different things. And that's something that gets very, very confused. And I'm sure we'll tap into that for me. But there is definitely a difference between race and culture. And so now been doing sales and marketing pretty much my whole life, talking to people. It was something that didn't come naturally to me. I was funny and I had this personality, but I was never comfortable around strangers. I never wanted to go up to somebody and just start a conversation. So I did have to learn all of these skills, but got into sales, pushed me over the comfort zone constantly every day. And I just got great at telling a story. Now, people called it sales, they had to, because that's what I was doing. That was the position, but it was storytelling. And for my entire life in my sales career, I've always said I've never sold a thing because I always tapped into the person I was talking to. I created an environment in their mind for them to decide what it is that they wanted, whether they wanted to deal with me or not, or wanted the product, service, whatever. And so I've been able to take this storytelling that my family infused in me at such a young age and help people tell their stories, their brand stories, their product or service stories, and make people actually care about it. And it's been a wild ride because story branding is a relatively new concept. I've been doing it, but it's a new concept to everybody. And now we're finding the language to describe it. And I'm at the bottom. This is still a fresh, new concept and idea. And I just feel excited that I'm at the beginning of it because that's what my family did. They always paved the way. So every aspect of my childhood and my birth and my story takes me to where I am today. And by the grace of God, which is my preferred religion and belief, I've locked in to who I am and what my purpose is. And when you start seeing and hearing the links from my name to how I united with my family, it really is something higher power. And I hope that people also, find a reason to believe in something bigger.
What is your purpose?
My purpose is my voice. It's the message. So what's really interesting is when I was born, my birth mother named me Angie, Angie. There was no Angela. And so until I could be formally adopted, I was Angie Telemock, which was my original last name. And my adopted mom was really, really smart. She kept the name. It happened to be one of her best friend's names. And she just made it more formal, Angela. So I was able to keep my name and still be both those entities. That is so powerful for me, is my actual name. And Angela, Angie, whichever, means the messenger of God.
Oh, wow.
And it always has been. Wow, is it? Like when I look back as a child, you don't think about these things. You're not self aware and introspective like that. So it was something that was given to me from the very beginning.
So many things are going through my mind as you say that. Number one, the importance of incorporating or keeping the name that you were given at birth is so powerful and so meaningful to the identity of every human being. Some people choose to change their names when they get older, and that's great, and that's their choice. But when you are given a name by the person who birthed you, and to erase that is powerful and harmful in so many ways. And I think adoptive parents, hopeful adoptive parents, don't understand that because we're all so connected to a name, right? They have a name that they've always dreamed about. naming their child. And I think there's a way to do both, right? To keep that. The other thing you said, though, about telling a story, right? There's so much dialogue. There's so many voices now out on social in the adoption world. And I truly believe they all have a message they are trying to convey. But it's in how you convey that message that the other person can receive it. And so storytelling becomes so important.
Absolutely. And when it comes to the name aspect, you are 100% right. Because when I did finally reconnect with my family, I was Angie. Oh, it was Angie, Angie, Angie. They did not care. They didn't know, they didn't care. That was my family name.
Yeah.
That was my biological family name. I always think to myself, and I always go to my sister, and I'm like, imagine if my name was Rebecca or Stephanie, or, how crazy would that be? And even now, I'm noticing that in the beginning, my family really leaned into Angie. And I grew up Angie. My whole entire family, my adopted family knows me as Angie, and they rarely call me Angela. But when I turned 18, I just wanted to be a little bit more professional when I graduated and went to Angela. So the second half of my whole life calls me Angela. And so when I met my biological family, it was Angie, Angie, Angie. And now, as time has passed, they've kind of adopted Angela. And I think that's so interesting from a perspective. And I haven't really even had a conversation about it with them. I just noticed the change. And my nieces and nephews, they're teaching them to say Angela. And I thought that was just so interesting because I'm both. It actually formally does not matter what you call me, Angie, Angela. But it is very, very true that that name change could really challenge the environment, because when you have two families that come together eventually or ever, it's identity. As an adopted child, you're always dealing with identity. There's just no way around it. And that name, it's in books how important a name is.
Yeah.
And when you talk about purpose, I literally wrap my purpose around my name. And it is such an important conversation for adopted parents to have prior to making that change.
Yeah.
Really think about it.
I love that. All right. So we talked about now. Now let's go back to the first 24 hours of your life. You said you beat the odds since day one. So let's go back to that first 24 hours of your life and the decision your birth mom made.
Before the 24 hours, she made the decision to go to the hospital because the child prior to me didn't make it. It went my oldest sister, my older brother, then she lost her third child. I was her fourth, and she felt something wrong. She knew that there was something wrong, and she went to the hospital 2 months premature prior. So her intuition, there's nothing like a woman's intuition, was also part of saving my life. So she went to Jackson Memorial. Jackson Memorial is in Miami, Florida. It's in Dade County. And this is such an important aspect of the story because Jackson Memorial is notoriously known for being a great teaching school and has an incredible NICU. It is one of the top teaching schools in the world. So everybody who is there are experts. And when I came into this world, I was almost an anomaly. I was sick beyond almost repair. They had never really seen a child this sick. And my mother went to the hospital. She didn't feel right and she had an infection, and that infection was being passed on to me. And so she gave birth to me. And like you mentioned, I was 3 pounds. I eat 3 pounds of food. Like, it's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. So, what happened medically was I had an intestinal problem. And so, if you've ever heard of a colostomy, it's basically a bag that has to sit outside of your body so that your bodily fluids or your food and nutrients can exit the body properly without poisoning you. And so, as a baby, this is a life or death situation for an adult. Adults don't survive this. Your organs are on the outside of your body. How do you live? And they made it happen. You can fight as a baby. You fight. I believe I fought. But other people have to fight for you.
Absolutely.
They did not have to. They wanted to. They felt the need to. Just the way my mom knew that she had to go to the hospital, these doctors knew they had to save me.
Other people have to fight for you.
That will never change in life.
Yeah.
I had to have the best team in the world. That's crazy. And in 1985, where Haitian immigrants and Haitian children and weren't at the top, we weren't necessarily the ones being pushed to the front of the line for help and aid. Something bigger had to happen for me to be alive, for me to make it. And not just make it, honey, I'm like the healthiest person I know. That is purpose. You don't come into the world completely dead and turn out to be one of the healthiest people that you know.
So, what were you told about the moment your mom decided to place you for adoption, or did she go in knowing that she wasn't going to keep you?
She did not know. She wanted to take me home. She was pregnant one day and then pregnant not the next. What is she going to tell the family? She already lost her other child. And there is pride. There's pride and ego in all of us. And she's human. She made the right choice, but at that moment, she didn't want to do that. She was terrified, but she had hope. She believed in God. And basically, the doctors told her, if you take her, she's not going to live for long. You don't have the medical know how, let alone even if she had the supplies, the medical know how. I can't even tell you, I needed 24 care. So she made the right decision. She signed on the dotted line, and I became property of the state of Florida, which is incredibly dangerous. Foster systems, they have their challenges. Now imagine an immigrant child with massive amount of medical care. She didn't even know if somebody else was going to be able to take care of me better.
Knowing that there was a point in your life, for lack of a better word, you didn't belong to a person who was loving and caring you. You belonged to a state. What did that do for you, if anything? And maybe it didn't.
Because I belong to everyone. Some people can take a narrative and make it positive or negative. I belonged to everyone and they cared for me to the extent that when I did go home to my family, finally after 4 months of being in the hospital, I slept for 4 days straight.
Wow.
I woke up to eat and they were terrified. I would just sleep because the nurses would play with me. The night nurses would come in and play with me. The day nurses would come and play with me. The doctors, the tubes, the tests, the da 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 da.
You were tired.
I was tired, but I was tired from love.
During that time, all that playing, a NICU nurse saw you and said, "Give me that one." Those are the words you were told she said?
Not exactly,
Okay.
but energy is real.
Yeah.
Just like an atom and neutrons, and there's an attraction naturally in life. And this woman had been a NICU nurse for probably close to a decade already. She had seen sick babies, she had helped them. She had two boys at home, a stepdaughter. There was no reason. It's like somebody who has all these pets and you just don't need another one. You don't need it. But something told her, yeah, that one. And she knew the system. She was a nurse in Florida, Dade County. She knew what would happen. Now, her advantage was that she had help. She had a nanny, a full time nanny that stayed home and took care of the house. I still don't know. Now, nannies are everywhere. Nanny shares and nanny this, nanny that. I knew one or two people who had a nanny in my life. So she had a nanny in the 80s, which is boss. That's taking care of business. And they were friends. And so she had a tool, she had a person who she trusted enough to take care of me. Changing a colostomy bag is not for the faint of heart. I'm sure Pam is her name, didn't sign up to change a bag of bodily fluids every few hours. And it's not pretty. And in the 80s, you couldn't even do it in a clean way. Like, I was an experiment. There wasn't that many of me. It's crazy. And so now, Mary Ellen, the nurse, is going to put this task on another person. She's thinking about everybody. She's got two kids. How is this sick child going to change the atmosphere of the family? Are the kids going to be grossed out? Are they going to be? There were so many questions she had to ask herself, and I don't think she really did.
Was this a foster family at this time?
Yes. So at that point, she became my foster mom. The nurse, Mary Ellen, became my foster
Okay.
mom.
And she is a white woman. And if you're not watching this, Angela is a black woman. And at that time, interracial adoption was restricted in Florida at the time. Now, you weren't adopted yet, but tell me about how that transition happened from foster care to adoption. And then we'll kind of get into a little bit about what happened.
And so she brought me home. She did everything right. She became a foster parent. That was easy. The state said, sure, and we'll give you money for that. She was like, great. And that's going to help with medical supplies and da 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 da. And so the nanny, Pamela, and I became really close. She was with me all the time. She was changing my bags. We were intimate. And that relationship just naturally grew. And it grew to the point that it was almost undeniable that we belonged together. And so before they actually made that decision and had that talk, it wasn't long after I came home in December of 84 that they were like, let's make this official. Mary Ellen's like, I'm going to adopt this child into my family. And they were stopped. They were denied.
This is the nanny. The nanny says, I want to adopt.
This is the foster mom.
The foster mom. Okay.
Connection with the nanny was happening. But that conversation hadn't happened about the switch. So we're all still going about our days, going about the plan. And the plan was for her to adopt me. And the state just put a stop to that. But again, we have to remember that not all challenges are put in place to hurt us. A lot of these challenges were put in place for perfection. And that stopping of that adoption elongated the time that I had with the nanny, which cultivated that really deep relationship that spurred the conversation to say, hey, maybe what if I adopted Ange?
Why was the first one denied?
My adopted mom saved a lot of papers, and I'm just finding all of the applications, and I haven't found all of the information, and I didn't have these conversations prior. I was told the stories I was told, and I was happy with them. And so that was it. It was just that. That's how I ended up with my mom. So I don't know. I don't exactly know.
My guess is because she was single and white.
So I think the white has more to do with single. When I was finally adopted, it was by a single mom who was 55 years old. And you know what I mean? Like making nanny salary. So it couldn't have been. It definitely was the white aspect, but again, I want people to also understand that there was a higher power in making sure that that didn't happen so that something else could.
Yeah. Hey, quick break from the episode. If you're new here and wondering if adoption is the right path for you, don't just guess. I created a free 5-minute quiz called Are You Ready to Adopt? That will tell you exactly where you are in the process and what to do next. Thousands of families have already taken it, and it's the perfect starting point. Just head to rgadoptionconsulting.com/quiz or click the link in the show notes. Okay, back to the episode. So now your nanny, Pam is her name?
Yes.
Was saying, okay, I want to adopt Angie. Angie, not Angela. It was Angie. How old were you?
So I officially got adopted when I was 6 years old.
But interracial adoption was still restricted in Florida, right?
Yeah, very much in the South. And it was restricted, believe it or not, a lot of the times by the Black culture. The Black culture didn't feel that a white family could raise a Black child. But the irony is that they were the only ones adopting Black children. And so it was this really insane dynamic. And there is truth in all of that. But at the end of the day, if you can find somebody who loves you, who really loves you, then it works out. What I know now is my upbringing is not any different than anybody else's upbringing. I understand that I have a unique story, but everybody does. No family is perfect. There's insane dynamics. I take a look at my life and I'm like, I actually am lucky that I didn't end up with my Haitian mother. My life wouldn't have been as fulfilled.
I'm curious, when you say that to a Black family, what's the reaction? Do they argue that with you?
No, not typically, but it's not positive or they don't really believe it. And I mean, we know I'm labeled very quickly as I'm not Black or I'm an Oreo or all of these things. But my baby, let me tell you, this hair is Black, this skin is Black. I am Black through and through. And I have Black problems, but I don't have Black cultural problems. I don't have Black cultural problems. This could get super controversial because my identity is wrapped in who I am, not the color of my skin. And so that's important because I was never told that I couldn't do something. I was never told that because of the color of my skin, this is going to be harder or all of that. I was raised like all of my cousins. So I had no boundaries. I had no boundaries. I had no racial ties to my success and my personal growth. It was never an excuse for me. My only excuse for not doing well and failing or whatever it was because of me. And so, yeah, both cultures. I mean, my family, the white culture, they were like, what are you doing? Why do you have a Black baby? Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just adopt a white baby? And then on top of that, she's all messed up. Like, why would you do that? Why would you put yourself through that? You don't have to put yourself through that. You don't have to walk around with a Black baby and have people stare at you and judge you and ask questions. You don't have to. So they were getting it from both sides and they didn't care. And I didn't know. I had no clue. Now I know because I see it as an adult and I'm like, oh my gosh, look how judgmental all of these people are. I can't imagine what my family had to go through.
You never felt it.
Not once.
Wow, that's unique. And also, your mom
Yep.
decided to move and take you to another state. Now, was this before the adoption was legal or after?
Yes. So what happened was they had the conversation. The nanny and the nurse, Pam and Mary Ellen, finally had the conversation of, okay, Florida is not going to let us be a family. There might be a bigger purpose. The nanny says, I think the purpose is for me, who is childless, to have a child. And so they agreed. Then the plan was to move to Connecticut. We had to get out of Dodge. They didn't know when these laws were going to change. And so Connecticut had Yale. It was the best move to go from one of the best NICU units in the world to Yale NICU. Of course, they're going to take her. She was an icon in the industry. And so she was able to get a great job up here in Connecticut. We packed up our black conversion van that we called the Batmobile, and we traveled 3 full days all the way up to Connecticut. And I'll never forget it. We slept in the back. It was an adventure. It was always an adventure. And my brothers loved me to the core. I didn't know. I had no clue. And even I remember this one particular instance as a child, as a very, very young child in Florida. And we were at the beach. And I mean, I was taken to the beach too. They didn't know if I was going to sunburn. I mean, they just let me live. So we went to the beach, and I remember me and my mom in the water, and she's holding me, making sure I don't drown. And there was this other young girl, and she was just like, who is that? She's like, is that your grandma? And I'm like, no, it's my mom. And it was so normal. It was so normal to me. So we made our way up to Connecticut. And what the beauty of Connecticut was, and again, this is why things happen for a reason. This is why you're stopped in life sometimes. It's a blessing many times, because I needed a very expensive surgery. So I had the colostomy, and it was on the outside. Now I had to have a surgery so that I could be closed up and everything could be on the inside and I could live a normal life. If I had been adopted, that bill would have been completely owned by my family. But instead, Florida State paid for every single dime because I was their property.
Yeah. And I got to say, Medicaid for children, which is what you were on, is amazing. It's the best care you can get.
And I got it to the point where Dr. Teddy Bear, which was the doctor who stitched me up, he had only done a child like me maybe two other times on a child that was so small. I had to learn how to walk again. These surgeries don't happen on children. It's insane what had to be done in order for this all to work out smoothly. This was 6 years in the making. All of these stop points, all of these challenges were blessings. And I know that doesn't happen for everybody, but it happens a lot more often than we'd like to admit if we decide to change the narrative.
How did you learn to do that? Because not only were you born and all the circumstances of your life where people just didn't want the people caring and loving you to make it official, like the state was like, no, this won't work. And then Pam deciding to move, but she moved to a very white state.
Well, opportunity.
But the opportunity was there, which saved your life, and it was legal.
And we had family up in Connecticut and Maine, and they grew up in New England. My aunt was an outlier moving down to Florida. She spent years being very far away from her family. And so it was time. It was the perfect reason to move back to Connecticut. And not for anything, New England has great schools. It has great everything. I was given literally the best opportunity, and they didn't care about race. And that is a really important, controversial concept because, again, it wasn't about race, but they understood my culture. I was never once in my family called African American. Never once. They taught me I was Haitian American. That's not a narrative that a lot of people outside of the Black community can really grasp because we're still calling Nigerians African American in some areas.
So at what point did you realize that you were the only. And what did that do to you? Like, at what point did you look around? Or maybe you didn't. I don't know. It had to have happened at some point where you're like, maybe this isn't normal.
It was to me. It was to
You didn't
me.
go through that. You didn't
I didn't
feel
have
the
to.
only
What was I the only of, though?
Haitian American. And
But why did that matter?
did you have any mirrors? Were you looking for mirrors?
Of course I had mirrors. It's like growing up without a dad. If you don't have one, you don't know what it's like to have one. You can visualize and assume and all these things, but let me tell you, growing up with a dad isn't always peaches and cream, as I've come to know as a woman. So, what was I lacking? Because I know so many families who biological children completely ignored by their moms, by their fathers. I wasn't.
Was there ever a time in your life that you grappled with that you had a different narrative in your head?
The only time, the only time I ever grappled with that was I was driving and the internet was still really new and I began looking for my family and Pam knew about it. My adopted mom knew about it and we're driving and I was talking about it and she got very vulnerable and very emotional and she was just like, I am terrified that you're going to leave me for your family.
A worry many adoptive parents have.
But she was honest with me.
Yes. Amen.
And that's why I'm able to be who I am because it was always honesty. Not just honesty, it was truth.
Yes.
It was always truth. Because I don't know about honest. I was still a child, so I'm sure they shielded some things, but it was always truth. I couldn't hold that against my mom. And I understood that. That was the only time where I kind of stopped and really realized the magnitude. But it didn't have anything to do with my race. It was just the situation. But other people tried to make it a deal.
Yeah.
People have tried to make it a deal for me my whole life. I'm like, it's not. They're like, why? I'm like, because it's not. But why? And that's fair because it's new for you, not for me. I'm good. So it is all about mindset and perspective. Finally got adopted officially March 21st, 1993. And the nurse became my aunt. We found out also as adults that you can make your own family. Some of my best friends that I've known for 30 years are not even my friends anymore. They're my sisters. We call each other sisters. That's the bond. That's the energy. And if more people lived like that, they'd understand me better. But they don't. They live with
Mic drop.
restrictions. They live with rules. They live in the box. I'm free. I'm free to be exactly who I want to be. That's exactly who they raised.
Oh my God. I can throw out the rest of my questions now and be done because they don't pertain to you. It's so refreshing to hear this narrative from an adoptee, from a Black adoptee, raised by a white family, a single mom, no dad. Hello?
She was 50 years old when I was born. She was 2 generations ahead of me.
Why do you think people struggle so much with being able to live in that narrative for themselves? Because I have to believe people would love to feel the way you feel. It's much more freeing than where a lot of people are sitting.
Absolutely. Ego. We're all conditioned to believe and think a certain way. And the sooner you're able to get out of that, the sooner you're able to see a lot of truth. And fortunately, my mom was never part of that. She never partook in what society cared about. We were talking about aliens. We were talking about ghosts and God and past lives and possibilities. What is the truth? She made me question everything so that I could be rooted in who I am. Let's celebrate who we are. And that evolves. That evolves. I'm obviously not the same person I was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever. That evolves. But her foundation of supporting me, it's self-awareness. That's what people are afraid of. They're afraid of themselves. They're afraid of their feelings. They're afraid of the judgment. They're afraid of their own truth. They can't face it. But when you learn how to face the truth, and I had to face a lot of hard truths, you get used to it. Just like working out. You go to the gym and you get stronger and stronger and stronger. If you're put in a unique situation for your entire life, it's not going to matter anymore. You're built, you're sturdy. But it's the other people who are so obsessed with conditions, they've locked themselves up and they threw out the key themselves.
It reminds me, and this is going to be weird for a lot of people, but I'm woo-woo, and a lot of people know that if you've listened to me long enough. I did something called the Landmark Forum years ago. Have you ever heard of it?
Oh, Landmark. Yes.
I don't even know if it still exists.
I'm confident it does. It has been around forever. Yes.
Well, there was an exercise they did, and I might be giving away something, I don't know. But after a lot of work that we did over days, there was an exercise they did where they put 3 people on the stage. I remember, to me, they said, chocolate or vanilla, choose. And then they went to the next one and said, rainy or cloudy, choose. And then they said, why? Why did you choose that? And some people were like, well, I like sun better than clouds, whatever. I happened to get it right, which was, why did I choose that? Because I made a decision to choose it. I just chose it. That's what was given to me. I just chose it. I decided to choose it. And on a rainy, yucky day, sometimes I have to remind myself, I can choose this day or I can fight it. And that's what you've done. You have chosen the narrative that you have been given. You could have chosen a different narrative and lived it out, like a lot of other people are living it out online very loudly. But you decided to choose it in a different way. And that narrative is so powerful. And maybe you were born with a little bit of that genetics from your mama, and you were also taught it from your other mama in her living truth and vulnerability with you and sharing her own thoughts and feelings about her side of what she was going through, and also being able to talk about all the different things that maybe a lot of other people don't talk about, it and it being okay to talk about. She let that be okay and celebrated it.
Because she was so wise. I had a child at 50 years old. I would be so wise. I would be so
Although
wise.
I adopted at 41 and I thought the same thing, and then it hits you and you're like, man, maybe I'm not as wise as I thought. I'm still getting frustrated. I thought I'd be so zen as an older mom.
Well, that's different. Wise,
different.
you can't take away. But, and I'm going to tell you, Rebecca, the best thing you could have done was adopt later. These people, not all people, but I've noticed that my friends who have older parents, we're all still very close and we're softer and we have this type of confidence to us. And then when I look at a lot of my friends whose parents were a societal age to have children, they watch their parents get drunk and wasted and party and have fun being who they are. They had to go through that because they had young parents. I watched my mom drink a couple of times, special occasions. She was never smoking weed. I never saw her fight. It was such a beautiful life. And here is the controversy. Here is the real controversy that I always hesitate to talk about because I always fear my family, my biological family, seeing it, because the truth of the matter is nobody on this earth cares more about how I grew up than the Black culture. Nobody has more to say about it than the Black culture, to the point where I think it's very difficult in my scenario for my siblings. I essentially got the life. My brother was stuck in the Dominican Republic. He was born there. My birth mother promised to get him out and never did. My sister was the last one, last born, but she had first born child energy. So she's just da, 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 da. My mother was strict with her, strict to the point where she ran away. I've never thought about. I'm scared to run away. It would be awful. And this was my birth mother with my birth sister, my biological sister. At 16 years old, she's running off to Europe. At 16 years old, I'm playing soccer. I'm playing sports. I'm playing the violin. I'm in concert choir. I'm driving to the beach with my friends. I'm going to the movie. She's running away from home. And not that it was abusive, but it was strict. Very classic Haitian mother, do what I say, not as I do, you know? And so I got the life. And I didn't just get the life, I got the life. And I'm not rich, none of that, but grew up on the shoreline of Connecticut. Come on. Went to Maine every summer, had all these friends. I was safe. I was fed. I had siblings still. So when it was time for them to connect with my family, there was, and I didn't realize until this last 1 or 2 years, resentment. And I didn't realize the resentment that they had for a long time. And it's got to be hard. I would hate to see someone else have the better life when it's supposed to be the opposite. I wasn't supposed to end up this confident, this happy, this based on the narrative. I wasn't supposed to. So they had this narrative in their mind. They didn't know that I was adopted into a white family, I don't think, but they had this narrative and that it's got to be harder to grow up black in a white family. And when they found out it wasn't, it's got to be hard.
It wasn't for you, right?
Yeah.
Because that was your narrative, because you chose that.
Right.
So you're not black enough for the black community. You're too suburban and for your own biological family. How did you navigate? Did you feel disconnected from both communities at times? And how do you navigate growing up where you belong? Or maybe it's more so now as an adult.
I navigated it because I didn't even know better. So I was in a white culture. I grew up in a white culture. So going into the suburbs was nothing to me. I was the star, baby. I was the star. And from a very young age, I remember it was fifth grade, and I did realize I stood out. I realized I stood out because it wasn't about race, but I realized I stood out and that people were trying to put me in a box. And so I decided to change this narrative. And again, this comes and rolls right into exactly what I do today. But I said, I'm going to change my narrative and I'm not going to be the black girl at school, not because I wasn't proud of my skin, but because people tried to use it as a narrative to place on me. So I said, I've always loved fashion. I'm going to wear 2 different colored socks. And I know that's very, very small and crazy. And it's actually a very Haitian thing to do. But I wore 2 different colored socks forever. 2 different colored socks, bright clothes, things like that. All the attention was taken off that. And it was put on my personality, who I was, how crazy I was, how fun I was, loud, whatever it was. Because I was rooted in who I was. It wasn't about my color. And it changed everything. And from that point on, I'm not even kidding. I am a jewel in my little community because I stood out. I was great at sports. I was friendly. I was fun. I didn't sit in all of the classic stereotypes of a young black woman. So I was cool. The black community is just like, oh, they only liked you because you acted like them. I'm like, well, I grew up in the white culture. Like, how will you want me to act? And then if I was like acting a little bit more urban, then they would be like, oh, that's so fake. That's not you. And I'm like, what do you look? All right, we're not playing this game. I'm going to be me. And if you don't like it, I can't help that. I can't help that. So I learned from a very young age to change the narrative. And I did. And I became the crown jewel. And I was voted all these things in all the clubs, had all the friends. And it wasn't this narrative that they felt bad for you. No, I was the leader. I was the
I
leader.
love you, Angela. So now when you see all the negative reactions on social media about adoption, what's your reaction to it?
I don't actually see a lot of content about adoption.
Okay, good. It's out there if you look for it.
It's because I'm not making it. And the thing is, unfortunately, like the news, which I stay away from a lot of the mainstream conversations around adoption because they don't pertain to me. And I'm constantly an outlier and constantly being challenged. And that's fine. But I'm not going to put myself in the situation if I don't want to. I'm at peace. You're not. I am. And so it's a really interesting thing to watch when I do tap in and I do see these conversations and I hear them. And I'm like, that's your experience. That's your living reality. And we have to respect that everybody has a different living reality. It's just not the same for everybody.
Yeah.
It's magical. But I've had to navigate these two families. And the other crazy thing is, my white family swallowed up my biological family. They were like, we love Jennifer. She can come anytime. She looks just like you. She is you. It's having like another Angie. They were hugging her. They were loving her. They were inviting her. She became family immediately. And when I tried to do the opposite, they shut that down. My biological family wants nothing to do with my personal life. They don't want to meet my friends. They don't want to come to Connecticut. They get attitude when I bring them around my people. There's attitude. It's insane.
How do you navigate that? Hey, I want to pause really quickly. If you're in the early stages of the adoption process and maybe feeling a little bit overwhelmed, I've got something that's going to help. I've put together a curated playlist of the most important conversations you need to hear before you begin. These are the episodes that actually prepare you. The ones families have told me changed how they approached their adoption. Grab it in the show notes below, and now let's get back to the conversation.
It's not my problem. Their issue is not my problem.
Do you keep bringing them around, or do you have some distance, or
they won't come around?
Well, let's back up for a minute and let's talk about the reunion. It's a cool part of your story, starting with, I think your sister called you out of the blue, reciting your birth details to you, and you're like, who are you? So walk us through all of that.
Well, it actually started with my birth mother because she kept every piece of documentation that she possibly could. She kept all of my bills. She kept my original Social Security card. So she had my Social Security number. She kept anything in a box and held on to it for 24 years. If we're talking about manifestation, baby, that is it. And so she held on to this information. And then when my sister was old enough, she gave her this task. You're going to find your sister. You got to do this, because that's the Haitian mother way. But she was like, this is your task. And that's when Jen went full throttle. She reached out to a private investigator in Miami, Florida, and she had no money. She was a student, and she told the story to this investigator, and he was blown away. And he just did his little do and found me living in my hometown. She had my address, my phone number. She called the phone. She left a message. I still hear it to this day.
Can you repeat the accent?
So my sister didn't have an accent.
Oh, okay. I love that accent. My sister
didn't have an accent. My mother did. And when I speak about Angie, she would cry every time. But my sister reached out to this private investigator. He did his little thing in his little keyboard. And she got my phone number, called me up, and left me a voicemail when we would have these voicemail boxes that we would have to listen to and press play and delete. And I thought it was like a bill collector or something. Hi, this is Jennifer Nelson. I'm calling for Angie Legg. She didn't say I was your sister, nothing. Please give me a call back at your earliest convenience. She sounded like a telemarketer. So erase. And I remember that to this day, now that tapped in. And so then, few years later, My mom became a nanny for this incredible family of 4 boys and a father in Guilford, Connecticut. And it was time for my mom to leave my aunt. The kids had grown up. I was changing. I had to get put in a place where I could grow. So it was time for them to split. And let me tell you, that is the same as divorce. I suffered divorce. I'm not any different from anybody. If you take the word adoption out of it, that was divorce. My other parent, my other provider is now going somewhere else with my brothers, and I'm going somewhere else with my mom. So there are so many similarities that people aren't putting together. So my mom found a new job in the suburbs for this family of 4 boys. It's crazy, who scared every nanny they had out the door. And we all became family. And these 4 boys are still what I consider my brothers to this day. And so here we are. I have these 4 boys. We grow up. We're best friends. We're brothers. We're sisters. We all live in the same house. We eat dinner together, everything. And one of the boys stayed home one day. We're all grown up. One of the boys stayed home. I had just moved, and my sister decided, after that voicemail message years later, decided she's just going to drive down to the address that this guy gave her, to my hometown. She was living in Boston, got her boyfriend, got her in the car, and drove 2.5 hours. Knocked on the door, nobody answered. Dogs barking, knocking, knocking. She starts crying, keeps knocking, and then one of my brothers answers the door. How can I help you? And she's like, is Angie here? And she's in tears. Is Angie here? And he's like, no, she moved about 2 months ago. She's like, I'm her sister. And he goes, excuse me? What? Because he knows. He knows that I was adopted. He knows. Excuse me? Come in. Come in now. Let me show you her Facebook. Here's her phone number. And that day, February 2nd, 2008, I get a phone call after work. I just moved to this incredible apartment. I'm relaxing. No one's home. See a Boston number. Delete. Bill collector. Always. Call. Who keeps calling me? Finally pick up. Hello? And this is before spam was actually spamming like that. Hello? Hi, is this Angie Legg? Yes, who's this? This is your sister. You were born Angie Telemock, September 4th, 1984. To Kara's mean Excuse me? Excuse me? I was just relaxing. I just got off of work. I'm a little who? Where do you live? I'm like, I'm another 40 minutes. Come to me. She got in her car, drove another 40 minutes, and I'm in the apartment by myself, ready to meet my sister. And she pulls up. She's in the parking lot. We're texting. Come in. I let her in. And then she's at the door. And then I'm at the door. And I open it. And we saw each other for the first time, but we saw each other very differently. I saw this beautiful young woman who didn't quite look like me, but there was an energy. But when she looked at me, she saw our mom, and she goes, one of the very first things she goes is like, you look so much like my mom. And we came in and we hugged and we sat and we cried. And that moment changed the trajectory, I believe, more so of my life, because Jennifer was the vehicle for finding me for my mother. And when that happened, when she made that happen, which is seemingly impossible, I never heard my mom, my biological mom, thank her. I never heard her be like, you did the impossible. Thank you so much. You found my daughter. You did it. I never heard that. I never even saw body language that represented that. And I've expressed that to her. I'm like, look, thank you. I know you weren't doing it for me. but you should know that this was incredible what you did. And she brought me to my family. And she had this idea of what it was going to be like to be a sister, to have a sister. And that was hard too. Navigating that, navigating other people's expectations of who they thought I was going to be. And so it has always been this challenge of getting to know each other. But I truly believe that unfortunately there has been this resentment that I hate to admit, but there's just too many things that have happened over the years. Actions speak louder than words. I'm not a dummy. My family loved me. I know what love looks like. And I think what's really tough is that also I didn't have the same birth mom that my brother and my sister did. My birth mom held a box of papers for 24 years. My birth mom sent you to come find me. My birth mom, when she heard my voice, every time until her dying day, cried her eyes out of pure joy, astonishment. I didn't have the strict Haitian mother. And that also had to be very, very difficult to see that she was just Angie, 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 Angie. Gotta be tough. I didn't have their same mom. And that's crazy. And that happens in regular families too.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Did you end up having a relationship with her?
With my mother,
Yeah.
with my biological mom, a little bit. The language barrier obviously caused challenges, but I've always had a relationship with her because I've actually been rooted again in who I am. So spiritually, I've been very, very connected to her to the point where, and whether it's spiritual or whether it's environmental, when I entered grade school, kindergarten, even though I'd not grown up with Creole or my Haitian heritage, I had a very, still sort of do, speech impediment where I have trouble with my W's and my R's. And that is because in the native language, those two letters are pronounced a certain way. So it was in me. It was in me. And they still, it's still in me. Yeah. That's incredible. That's incredible.
There's so many stories like that. It's so crazy. Did you meet your biological dad too? And what was the backstory there? Because I think you were told he had died originally.
100%. My mother wanted absolutely nothing to do with my biological father. That was not a great relationship, even though she did decide to have two children with him. And when I was born, in order to sign over the paper, she was like, yeah, he's dead. There is no father. And so fast forward, my sister reunites me with the family. And then my mom tells my sister that we have the same dad. And then it wasn't. Then my sister found out that her dad died, which was true. So for like 2 months, we thought we had the same dad. And then she found out it wasn't. I'm like, oh.
So wait, she wasn't even your half sister?
She's my half sister.
Through your mom?
She's the same mom.
Oh,
yeah.
I thought you said you had different mom. Okay.
Yes, sorry. So same mom, meaning we had the same biological mom, but not the same mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not the same mom. The way she treated me
Right.
was not how she treated my sister and my brother.
Right. She wasn't parenting you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
She was just loving me.
Yes.
So she thought that we had the same dad. Then she found out it wasn't, but my dad was still alive. That also has to hurt. My dad's still alive, and that Dominique, our brother, is my full brother. Out of all of us kids, me and him are the only ones with the same parents. And we look alike. And we act alike. And me and my sister act alike too. It's crazy. So it was challenging to see her have to navigate that by herself. But it was incredible to find out that I had a father. And he was a famous painter in the Dominican Republic.
Wow.
And he creates these incredible pieces, a true artist. And that artistry lives inside of me. He's always been such a huge part of who I am. And I'm completely unemployable. I am an entrepreneur hardcore. And so was my mother. And when I went down to Florida to meet her for the first time, I remember I was staying in the bedroom and she called me out. She goes, Juju, Juju. And my sister's like, she looks up from the bottom bunk. She goes, that's you. I go, Juju. She's like, yes, it's an endearing name for, a child. I'm like, okay. She's like, Juju, come here. So I go in there and she's trying to talk to me about her business. And she had a suitcase of socks. This is Miami, July 4th weekend. She had a suitcase of socks. She goes, I have clients. I'm like, Ma, it is 300 degrees outside. You're selling no socks. Came back, bag empty, pockets full. I'm like, it's in me.
The hustle.
Even more so, the hustle, but she just refused to call it quits.
Isn't it interesting that she sold socks and you decided to wear different socks on either foot?
I've never even thought of that. I've never even thought of that. I'm telling you, every part of my story has these very strong connections, very strong, undeniable. So it would be ridiculous for me to not be rooted in who I am. And then when I find out who my family is, it only confirms who I am even more because my father's a painter. I love art. I went to school for architecture and interior design. My brother is a film producer and an actor. Everybody thought I was going to be an actress when I grew up because I'm just that expressive and I love creating content. I am my family without having to grow up with them. You can't tell me I'm not the most authentic person that I know. Nothing stopped me from being who I was. No outside source could affect the destiny of who I was always supposed to be.
Wow. That's huge.
Huge.
Because not a lot of people that I know can truly live their true self. I struggle with that too, a lot, depending on who I'm with and where I am. And I fight with that within myself. It's a hard thing to do. You make it sound easy, but it's not easy. What do you wish adoptive parents, especially white adoptive parents, understood about raising Black children?
There's nothing to understand. Raising children is different for everybody. It doesn't matter. It's hard. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they look like. It doesn't matter what their hair is. It doesn't freaking matter. Do your best. Love that child.
Do you have children yet?
So, no. And for a long time, I wasn't sure if I was able to. And then when I was in my teens, I did ask the doctor that performed the surgery. He's like, you should be able to. And I have grappled with having children and my own self-awareness of what that looks like. I'm very spoiled. I'm very spoiled. I am. I was the baby. I was the girl. And I have a different perception of when you can become a parent and how to become a parent. And even now, women are having children later on in life. It doesn't matter. But even from the very beginning, as a baby, it didn't matter. Somebody who was 50 years older than me decided they wanted to be a mother and did. So I can do whatever I want. I can have kids whenever I want. Or I don't have to have kids. Or, yeah.
What a beautiful way to live your life. It sounds like a beautifully fun way to live your life.
It takes a lot of beating, though. I'm constantly being challenged on it. Constantly being challenged on my authenticity. When I realize that I'm being challenged on my authenticity, I realize that person typically feels what they're asking.
And I have to believe, too, that it's sometimes hard to believe because it's so different than the way most people live. They want to live. They're trying to get there, but it's hard to believe sometimes.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because once you believe it, you have to take accountability.
Yeah. Yeah. That's for sure. Is there a message you want to give to other adoptees? If you were to give a piece of advice or a message to other adopted people?
It's not any different. It's not any different. Families are families. There are biological families who have terrible circumstances, children in horrible circumstances. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change. There are favorites in every family. What are we complaining about? We have a 1 in a trillion bazillion chance of even being put on this earth. If you have the ability to walk, talk, move, you're good. What are you worried about? What is the problem? What are you trying to unearth that's just going to make you mad and make you hate your life? Why would you choose the narrative that makes you sad?
I can agree with that piece, but I disagree with it's not any different. Because I think it is different. And I think we've talked about that, right? About the identity piece and about you were fortunate to learn and meet and see the people. And there's a lot of people who don't get that. And so they live wondering. So I disagree with it's not any different. I think it is different. And you can still choose the narrative that you live in. But that's my truth. That's what I believe. And I love where you come from. And everything in life is a choice. And we have to see that. Everything in life is a choice. The way we show up, the way we react, the way we communicate, what we do, where we live. Everything is a choice. And what are we doing with that? Angela, what a beautiful conversation.
Thank you so much. And you provided insight that I haven't had yet. 24 years talking about this. And you gave me an insight that I haven't had yet. And I'll carry that forever, which is so powerful. And you're great at what you do. You're really supplying the community with really important conversations that weren't had back when I was young. There was no forum for it, there was no opportunity to have somebody like myself. And you're putting me on your platform is going to have some controversialness to it because of my views and how I decide to live this adopted experience. And I just really appreciate it. And I appreciate you standing in your authenticity as well, saying that you disagree and that, because that's it. That's exactly it. We all have our own reality. Respect that.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
And I hope that that controversy, if you're listening, is more internal than external. I really do, because that's what this conversation is supposed to do. And I mean, it has for me. It's just a good reminder. And it's a different kind of conversation than I've had with anyone. And I really appreciate that. But I'm not letting you go so quickly. I do have a rapid fire round of questions. And the first one is a shout out to a person or an organization that's influenced your adoption journey.
I'm going to shout out Connecticut. Connecticut is the reason I'm adopted. Connecticut, at the time where adoptions were illegal in many parts of the United States, they just held a different narrative. They were the reason I was able to live this all out. I would have stayed a foster kid. Who knows if my mother would have. So, big shout out to Connecticut for being leaders in community, in love, acceptance. They put their ego aside and they made family the number one. And I still believe that to this day. I could not be who I am without this state. So a big shout out to Connecticut. It's probably why I still live here and keep coming back, because it's such a big part of my heart. And Connecticut is just constantly being beat down by, all the haters. But Connecticut is a fantastic state, and they're doing things for families that we don't even know is happening. So thank you, Connecticut.
Angela Legg for mayor of. What's one piece of advice you would like to share with adoptive parents or hopeful adoptive parents?
The piece of advice that I would share is don't be afraid. Let them discover. Let them discover. It's their experience, it's their journey. My adopted mom never stopped me from trying to look for my family, but she did express her emotions and vulnerability, but she never stopped me. She wasn't fearful of how it would end up, not out of malice, but just out of this is her journey. Because sometimes it does go great, sometimes it doesn't. Again, it's complicated. My cousin, for instance, is a single mom and the father is out of the picture. Now, if that father has kids later, and now with 23andMe and Ancestry and all of that, I would totally be like, yeah, search out your family, search out what parts of you, because you may find out you want to change that about you. You may find out so many things. You may find out the worst, but that's your journey. That's the adoptee's journey. I think I hear a lot of narrative of don't let them, let them.
What's one thing you wish every adoptive parent knew before they brought their child home?
I wish that they knew, if they're like a really loving family and it's a solid core family, how much it means to us. Because I was never in a foster family, foster home type of scenario. It's always been my family. But when I look at, in my particular scenario, all the obstacles that they had to go through in order for us to be a family, I think that's just so amazing. Even the adoption, to adopt a child now, it's just a process. We get it. When we're really loved by the family, we get it. When we don't always say it. I didn't say it enough. I love her more today than I did as an adult and a child, because I understand her more. We do know. We understand. It's later, but we're absorbing it all, and we are thankful, and we won't come across it a lot. That's a narrative too. Oh, you should be thankful. You should be thankful. We don't have to be, but most of us are. We are thankful. I am thankful I'm in a loving family. I am thankful.
Describe adoption in 3 words.
Love, faith, and family.
Adoption is not just a destination. It's a journey filled with love, resilience, and growth. Wherever you are on this roadmap, trust in your path, stay open to learning, and always lead with your heart. You already have everything you need to create a beautiful story for your family. And when the road takes unexpected detours, I'm here to help you navigate every turn along the adoption roadmap. Angela Legg, thank you so much for sharing your narrative with us today. We took a lot of golden nuggets away from this conversation. And if you liked this conversation, please share it with others and give us a review. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope this episode gave you something to think about, or better yet, something to take action on. If you have questions about anything we talked about today, or if there's a topic you'd love to hear on the show, please shoot me an email at support@rgadoptionconsulting.com. I read every single email. And don't forget, you can find all the resources from today's episode in the show notes, including links to connect with me and take the next step in your adoption journey. If you haven't already yet, hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a 5-star review. It helps more than you know. Thanks so much for listening. See you next week. Bye-bye.